You are.
Yeah, TNCRadio.LIVE. This is Clutch Time Sports with your hosts, Ivan and Josh.
Welcome, and thank you very much, Mr. Tom Kelly. I'm Ivan Anderson with my co-hosts. We are co-hosting the show together, as we always do. My main man, JB, Mr. Josh Baker. And we are having a wonderful time. It's kind of cooling down a little bit here in California. It's no longer 104 degrees. It's like hovering around the mid-90s. So we're not sweating too bad, about 37% humidity. So we'll take it. JB, how you feeling this afternoon, man? Or I should say this evening.
I'm calm, cool, collected, and crazy. So, average day for me.
Average day?
Yeah.
You know, our fans can't see us, but we actually look like an Easter egg.
Yeah, I got my lavender shirt of love right here, and you've got your mint green pastel. We look like we could be part of a Easter egg hunt, that's for sure.
That is so funny. Well, we've got a lot to cover today. We're going to talk about the AFC, get you ready for the preseason. But before we get into football, we thought we'd throw this out real quick and cover it. Fernando Tatis Jr. suspended 80 games after testing positive for PED. And there's only, 50 games left in the season. So obviously he's going to serve 48 of those this year. And whatever they do in the postseason, he'll get that and pick the rest of that up starting the 23 season. But it came with a lot of disappointment. He goes on, of course, he apologizes to the team owner, the general manager, of course, Major League Baseball, and the like. But I guess that would, if you have ringworm, you'd have some idea of what kind of ointment you're putting on. So first, I'd like to know, how did he get ringworm, and who did not advise him about putting on this particular ointment that had the PED in it to cause him to get caught. He did test negative in his March test, but of course that was back in March, but he tested negative here. JB, he's 23 or 24 years old. Just signed a $14 million contract for $340 million. I believe that's the third largest contract in the history of Major League Baseball. It seems like the Padres just cannot get out of their own way.
And if you had ringworm as a topic of conversation on Clutch Time Sports tonight, you've won your office pool, obviously. So, take a swig of your favorite beverage and you've won yourself a couple of bucks for the office cooler, because, everybody's at the office coolers these days. Yeah, Padres are going to Padres. And that's kind of the sad thing about it, is that I am amazed that we're still in this day and age where we know how baseball is so strict, really, with their PED and their illegal substances and all that stuff. So if you're putting anything in your body, how can you not know what is in whatever it is that you're putting on your body, whether it's for ringworm or for a sunburn? It doesn't really matter. I mean, you're a guy that they're depending on and haven't played all season long. And then you make a huge trade and get Juan Soto, and you're to the point where the season tickets had to be stopped from being sold anymore for next year because the Padre fans are so excited about things. And now everything's come to a crashing halt because Tatis has been suspended. He's 80 games for the illegal substance. So it's just amazing. And, they had a hard hill to climb to even catch the Dodgers in the division. And I don't think that's going to happen in any way, shape, or form. But with the fact is that there's 3 wild card spots in Major League Baseball for the playoffs this year. The Padres still have a chance, even without Tatis, and he's going to have to use between now and the start of spring training next year to repair the damage that he's done within his teammates and the confidence that the lack of confidence now that they have in him as a teammate.
I mean, but let's think about this. We're talking the very south tip of Southern California and what the Padres have meant to San Diego, and finally get what they have in that lineup. I mean, you said it best. They had to stop ticket sales. What have you ever known the San Diego Padres to stop ticket sales?
They're the only game in town.
That's it. There's no San Diego Chargers
gone now. I mean, they've got a beautiful park down there. Expectations are high. You've got a great young nucleus of players, and now Padres are going to Padres, just like they always seem to find a way to do. I mean, you don't go 50-plus years almost without a world championship for a reason. So, I mean, just ask the Cubs. It took almost 100 years to win their last champion. Anyway,
well, I think it's funny because he signed that $340 million, and we were talking off air that most of these players today, they're signing these major, and it seems to be this thing that's happening in baseball right now. But when he signed that $340 million contract, he's not going to make all of that money. He's going to lose $2.7 to $2.9 million during the suspension. Of course, that's a drop in the bucket. But there's this new investment group, and I was just made aware of this last week when I started reading more on him in this $340 million contract. And this investment group is called Big League Advance. And what they did, they're like a big hedge fund that invested in this, in the tech market. But they took $26 million and spread that along 77 minor league baseball players, and Tatis is one of them. And so they gave them anywhere between 1 to 12% of their future earnings. And this happens a lot in professional tennis because somebody does have to flip the bill to help you get there. So they're figuring out that he's going to pay them about 8% of that $340 million, which I still think is a small price to pay. I guess when I look at the fans who have put all this money into baseball and into this team, it just kind of reminds me of why I'm going to use a basketball segue and an example. Why, when you talk about LeBron James, you talk about a guy that has character, not just on the court, but off the court. I mean, Tatis also broke his hand back sometime. Motorcycle. Yeah, motorcycle accident. Didn't do anything about it until March. I would invite everybody to read the book LeBron Inc., just to show you how you're supposed to act. But there's a problem that we have in our society when we expect these young people to have absolutely nothing. And all of a sudden you come into, let's not talk $340 million. Let's go from $0 to $1 million, $0 to $10 million. It's a lot of weight at 23 and 24 years.
But let's not forget this. I mean, as much as we want to blame his youth for this, remember, he's the son of an ex-Major League Baseball player. So he knows he didn't come up from nothing. I mean, he had a quote-unquote privileged life because his dad played many, many years in the majors. So, I mean, it's not like he didn't know or see how to be responsible because his dad did it all the time. I think it's just hard to regain the trust that he's going to have to build back. And now you've got a guy with Juan Soto there that they're going to have to bring a ton of money to keep past next year because he's only got one more year left on that contract.
Right.
So, and I kind of go back to my Giants in a way. I mean, yes, they had Buster Posey, who you could consider a superstar, but they didn't have, any kind of prima donnas on those three championship teams that they had in the early 2010s. They were a team. And it's going to take time for the Padres in this youth movement that they have to build that chemistry and build that team. And this situation only hurts it.
It really does. And it kind of reminds me of was that the 85 or 86 Mets? Kind of a similar situation. you had 3 great young players show up at the same time, and 1 or 2 of them couldn't handle it, and the other one could. So we will.
They got
see
one
what
title
happens.
out of it before it all went to pot. Thanks to Buckner.
Hey, I'll take it.
That's
I'll
right.
take it. And I was a Strawberry fan too. I mean, he had a good glove, had a good bat too, and he did play for the Yankees.
He played for a lot of teams towards the end of his career. He played with my Giants even for a short while.
That's right, he did.
Strike season.
That's right,
94.
he did, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least it was before Juice Ball.
Well, hey, we're going to break into our NFL preview that we promised. It's going to be this week, next week, and the following week. We're going to take a quick break and be back. You're listening to Clutch Time Sports right here on TNCRadio.LIVE.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
Stiction.
found throughout the oil system, stiction is the sticky friction that negatively impacts your engine's ability to function at an optimal level. The molecular structure of oil is a hydrocarbon. The engine's extreme heat, tight tolerances, and high pressure cause the oil to break down and release hydrogen, leaving behind varnish, a carbon-based deposit. The varnish clings to the engine's moving parts, creating drag on the turbocharger, oil pump, and pistons. Symptoms of stiction include a rough idle and the loss of fuel economy and performance. Hot Shot Secret Stiction Eliminator delivers a 98% clean rating in third-party scrub tests. Its synthetic cleaner plus nano lubricant contains no harmful solvents and is formulated to be left in the engine to safely dissolve stiction for thousands of miles. It works as you drive.
Stiction Eliminator is available at truck stops, Tractor Supply, O'Reilly's Auto Parts, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret. Powered by science.
This blog on TNCRadio.LIVE is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 5 ways to handle sickness on the road as a truck driver. Being sick on the road is one of the worst situations a truck driver could be in. As if being sick isn't bad enough, sickness on the road is 10 times worse. If you're sick at work, you can simply go home for the day and rest. This isn't the case for truck drivers. Truck drivers are hundreds and sometimes thousands of miles from their home. When a truck driver gets sick, it affects their ability to deliver their load on time. They also lose money while trying to recover. As a trucker, it's important to know how to handle sickness on the road. Here are 5 tips for you. Stay hydrated. Drinking water and electrolytes have a ton of benefits while you're sick. Water helps replace the fluids lost while loosening up mucus. Hot liquids also have benefits as well. The steam from hot liquids helps relieve congestion and soothe a sore throat. Stay clear of sugary drinks. They'll dehydrate you. Rest. Sometimes the best thing you can do while being sick is rest. Your health's more important than getting a load delivered on time. Plus, it can be dangerous to drive while you're sick. Take a day or 2 to rest and get better. Continuing to work while being sick will only drag out the healing time. Take medicine. If you start to feel sick, get medicine as soon as possible. Vitamin C supplements are great immune boosters. Also, avoid eating unhealthy, greasy foods. Eating properly keeps you healthy and boosts your immune system. If you're already sick, check to see which over-the-counter medicine would help the most. Talk to your dispatch. Let dispatch know what's going on. If you're sick, you may not be able to perform your daily duties, or you may not be able to drive at all. Don't rush recovery time. Rushing recovery time can result in re-injuring yourself. Truck drivers know that if their truck's parked, then they're not making money. It's better to take a week off to recover than try to work when you're not ready and further injuring yourself. This blog on TNCRadio.LIVE was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. Remember to tune into the Truckers Network Show with Shelley Johnson. Weekdays at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern.
All right, welcome back to Clutch Time Sports. We're going to let that go for you next segment. I'm your co-host, Ivan Anderson, co-host with Josh Baker. And as promised, we talked about getting down to the nitty-gritty of the NFL as preseason starts. Just a lot of games this weekend, starting tomorrow. A I think tomorrow's, the 18th, 19th, I believe the 20th. Am I correct on that, JB? So we wanted to start off with the AFC West. We're going to cover the AFC the next 2 weeks, 1 week.
Just today.
I wanted to make
do
sure.
the NFC next week, and then
we'll
have like a predictions and
yeah, that's right.
Talk about fantasy.
And fantasy.
That's right.
I don't want to talk about fantasy. I don't want to talk about
You're going to
fantasy.
have to at some point.
Jeez. Such a ringer league that I'm in. Guys, hey, all my trucker fans out there, I am in the worst ringer league. It is so set up for the top two to win. It's ridiculous. But anyways, I can say that it's our show, so I'll go ahead and get back to the subject. We're going to start with the Denver Broncos. The Broncos, JB. Last year they were 7-10. Easily the team most people expect to make the biggest leap forward in 2022 with the acquire of Russell Wilson. That is probably the blockbuster trade of.
Oh yeah, I mean it's this division is already going to be a bloodbath, and now you bring in Russell Wilson, and it's going to be even more crazy because if you look around the rest of the division, and we'll kind of highlight the rest of these teams here. The Broncos probably have the best skill position players in this division, top to bottom, now that they've got Russell Wilson. They've got two very capable running backs, one of them very young in Javonte Williams, and then they've got two really good receivers on the outside, Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, who may just be one of the fastest guys in the league, and certainly now in the division with Tyreek Hill leaving the Chiefs. But I don't think Russell Wilson is going to be missing DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in Seattle, especially having Sutton and Jeudy. And what'll be really interesting to see is, and this is probably going to be the key, I think, for the entire division, is which team is going to play defense. Which team is going to step up and be that defensive team that can stop each other, because the Broncos did sign free agent Randy Gregory, and they got rookie Nick Bonito to help try to keep points off the board defensively, but they really need a healthy Bradley Chubb along their defensive line to possibly think about them winning a division title. And I'm of the opinion, Ivan, that Russell Wilson makes you an automatic contender for that division title. I don't care if you've got Kansas City, Las Vegas, and the Chargers in the same division.
Well, you think they were 7-10 last year without a quarterback.
Yeah.
And when you think of Tyler Lockett up in Seattle, he didn't get a lot of touches. He didn't get a lot of touches even with him.
Well, he and Metcalf were kind of off and on. I mean, it'll be really interesting because I think the kind of like how you and I talked off the air about Juan Soto with the Padres.
Right.
How does a change of scenery reinvigorate Russell Wilson?
Oh, big time.
Oh, for sure.
Big time. And let me say this real quick. Let's be honest. No one, including myself, and I'm a Steeler fan through and through, but I respect the Seahawks, and I don't care who you are. You still have a hard time getting over that Pete Carroll call that cost him a second Super Bowl.
Why did that give it to Marshawn Lynch?
I mean, beast mode. Come on, really?
Yeah, crazy.
It's a fresh start for him. Get out of there, get that behind you, move forward. Now, the question I would ask is, you said defense. I think he gets a better line than what he had in Seattle. I don't think he has to use his feet as much down in Denver than he did up there.
Yep.
So,
I agree. Well, then you got the defending division champs, Kansas City, who's a perpetual AFC championship contender. But they lost Tyreek Hill. He's off to Miami, which was a very surprising trade by a lot of people. Mahomes still has Travis Kelce. They brought in Juju Smith-Schuster from your Steelers, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So if you've got a hyphenated name, you can play for the Kansas City wide receiving core. They bring back McCole Hardman, and so he'll still have weapons, but again, he made more mistakes last year than I think at any point in his career, and they're going to be now without the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, who was kind of the heart and soul of their defense, especially in the secondary. And they got a guy in Justin Reed who could be just as good on the field for Kansas City. But when you take out the heart and soul of your team, you're going to have a hard time finding the leadership and the soul of your team. So it'll be really interesting to see how the Chiefs play under that pressure now, especially knowing that they've got a stacked division.
Well, let's think about this on defense. We're talking about a guy who at LSU was a great player, had some troubles in LSU, but he was a great player. And for his size, the guy plays well beyond his size. You would think the guy was 6'5", 6'6", the way he hits, the way he goes after it, the way he runs the blitz. Those are some big shoes to fill. The question is, will Justin Reed fill those shoes in that way? But I agree with you. Leadership in the locker room is so important. So we'll see who will step up on that.
And leadership on the field, I think, is very underrated too. And speaking of leadership, what'll be really interesting is if we travel to Las Vegas. Derek Carr getting reunited with his fellow former Fresno State Bulldog Devontae Adams, who's come from Green Bay to be his number one wide receiver. Adams has arguably been the best receiver in the NFL the past several years. But he moves from Aaron Rodgers, arguably the best quarterback in the league for several years. Obviously, he's been the MVP. To Derek Carr, which, yes, he's had some rapport with in the past. Can that translate to the Raiders? I think it can. It'll just be interesting to see how fast that actually happens. And I think what's great for the Raiders is that they re-signed Hunter Renfrow to be that, I don't want to say 1A because he's definitely a step down overall from Adams, but he's as dependable as it comes as a number 2. And they've got probably the most athletic tight end in the league in Darren Waller. So they have just as many offensive weapons as anybody in this division. If Josh Jacobs can stay healthy at running back, I mean, look out. They got Kenyon Drake to back him up too. So it'll be really interesting to see, just like with all the rest of these teams, if defensively they could step up, because they were not very good defensively last year. And they signed Chandler Jones to try to be a anchor opposite of Max Crosby on the defensive line to try to get some pass rush. But they got to defend the run better. They got to do a lot of things better defensively, because in a division with the Chargers, Chiefs, and Broncos, you're going to have to get some stops every now and again to get a chance.
I think Josh Jacobs, he didn't have a good healthy season last year. Not at all. But I think if he stays healthy, like you said, it'll be good. But one thing I do like, bringing Chandler Jones will balance that defense out. Not everybody is now going to beeline on Crosby, because he's getting double teamed sometimes last year. The biggest problem I have with the Raiders is Derek Carr. Everyone wants to, and I know we're not talking about that right now, but everybody always wants to talk about Lamar Jackson. And it's time for him to step up. How long has Derek Carr been in the NFL?
Long time. Okay.
So why do we keep thinking that Derek Carr is something different?
Well, I mean, he's got better weapons now, for one, for sure. What's going to be, I think, real interesting more than anything in this division is now Josh McDaniels, the head coach of the Raiders. Can he bring a stability offensively that perhaps John Gruden hadn't had over the past few seasons before he had to get let go last year? So it'll be really interesting. They're definitely the wild card of this division for sure.
That's all, because I care less about his off-field stuff. I didn't like the trade that he did with some of his best defenders out there on the field a couple of years ago.
Yeah, traded Khalil Mack to the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, come on. It's. I don't get him. When we just talk straight football, I never understood the guy. And it's nothing personal. I just never understood his ideas. And so just to cap off one thing, because we're not going to make it into our next team, which I can't stand. Right? But Josh, just one question: 10-7 Raiders in this division. I don't see them any more than maybe 11-6.
Oh, I agree. In fact, I'd be surprised if any team in this division wins more than 11 games. because they're going to have to face each other two times. So, the Broncos are going to have to face the Chiefs twice, the Raiders twice, and the Chargers twice. And speaking of the Chargers, they probably have one of the most athletic and young teams in this division with Herbert just in his third year at quarterback. They've got Austin Eckler, who can do everything out of the running position. And then Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, arguably the best tandem of wide receivers in this division. So what they did was they went and got Khalil Mack, by the way, from the Bears. So he's now back in the division. And you throw him out there with Joey Bosa? Are you kidding?
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
That's going to be scary. They also got J.C. Jackson to go in the back in the secondary to join Derwin James, who's another young and up-and-coming guy. So for them, it's going to be evolution with regards to the head coach Brandon Staley to see how things go in their step up. Are they going to step up? I mean, you wonder if the Rams being in that same stadium and the influence that they have, could it rub off maybe on the Chargers?
I like Justin Herbert. I think the Chargers are better on paper. And if they can translate that on the field, I think this will be one of the top two teams, the top three teams here in this division.
I agree. And we've spent a lot of time already on the AFC West because they're four of the best teams in the conference. And we'll be highlighting the AFC North, the AFC South, and the AFC East here before we hear. But it's time for a break. We'll be back with Trey Raines. Right after this, you're listening to Clutch Time Sports on TNCRadio.LIVE.
I'm Hope Savara, your host of the Driver Life Podcast, every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern on TNCRadio.LIVE.
I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. Let's talk about anxiety. Did you know that anxiety is now considered to be the common cold of all mental illness? Yeah, as a matter of fact, 18% of our population is deemed to have an anxiety disorder. And I think the other 82% are lying about it. But is anxiety a mental illness? Is it a disorder? I mean, isn't it normal to be anxious? How do you know when you have an anxiety disorder versus normal anxiety? Well, there are three ways we can measure that. Frequency, intensity, and duration of your anxiety. In other words, how often are you anxious? How much of the day do you spend nervous, worried, edgy? And how intense is your anxiety? I mean, does it interfere with your life? Do you have panic attacks? Does it stop you from dealing with other people and situations? And then the duration. How long does it last when you are anxious? If you find that any of those three or all three of those things are significant, it might be time to get some professional help. But where does anxiety come from? Not from situations, not from other people or circumstances in your life. Anxiety comes from the perception of threat. In fact, investment plus perceived threat is the formula for anxiety. In other words, you have to care about something and you have to perceive that that something is threatened in order to create anxiety. So if you are anxious, what do we do with that? Let me give you 4 things that will work right away if you're dealing with anxiety. First, daily exercise. The research says if you exercise daily, you will decrease your anxiety. Secondly, learn to breathe properly. Even in short-term anxiety-inducing situations, inhaling to the count of 3 and exhaling to the count of 5 will reduce your anxiety significantly. Thirdly, take that formula that I gave you and figure out, am I too invested in something that doesn't really mean that much? Can I see this in a less threatening manner? Because if I can think differently, it will also reduce my anxiety. And finally, And this begins with young people all the way to the end of life. Face the things that you're afraid of. By facing the things that scare you and championing those things, you will reduce your anxiety and become a more confident person.
Hi, I'm Hope Savara. Join us every Monday on TNC Radio Live at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's Building Strong Minds.
Listening to Clutch Time Sports. That's right. I'm your co-host, Ivan Anderson, along with JB, Josh Banker. He has a little surprise for it, but I'm going to let him say it. But ladies and gentlemen, it is that third segment, time of the day where you can sit back, relax, get a nice cool one if you have one, get a soda if you like, or a nice cold glass of water. That's because in the last 4 years, we don't want Trayvon.
All right, I'm going to go through this probably a little faster than normal because we got a lot of NFL still to talk about, but still some fun things to laugh and smile about this week. Ivan, baseball, as you know, has its rarities. Pitching a perfect game, an unassisted triple play, hitting for the cycle, Randy Johnson making a pitch and hitting a bird mid-flight. All things have happened like that. But have you ever seen or heard of a home run cycle? So a traditional cycle, of course, is when you get a single, double, triple, and homer all in the same game. So how about that equivalent in home run fashion? In other words, hitting a solo homer, a two-run homer, a three-run homer, and a grand slam.
Yes.
Well, in Amarillo, Texas, St. Louis Cardinal infielder in the minor leagues prospect Chandler Redmond just did it last week. Probably the most interesting thing is that he didn't hit his first home run in this game until the fifth inning of the game. In that fifth, he hit a two-run opposite field home run. An inning later, he belted a grand slam. And then an inning after that, so this is 3 straight innings now. In the seventh, just a puny solo home run. And then in the eighth, so 4 straight innings, he hit a 3-run moonshot that capped off a 5-hit, 11 RBI day for the Double-A Springfield Cardinals.
Wow.
He hit 4 straight homers in 4 straight innings, coming off of 4 different pitchers, too, by the way. The only time that this has ever happened was when Tyrone Horn did it on July 27th, 1998, for the then Double-A Cardinals as well, but their affiliate was in Arkansas at that time. It has never, ever been done in the major leagues. So shout out to Chandler Redmond, the home run cycle. Can you imagine?
Wow. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. 11
RBIs.
I know. That's crazy.
Yeah. Shout out, Chandler. Excellent job. Okay. NFL training camps are notorious. This is rank number 2 for many things. Weird drills, in-camp fights. We've seen them even today. Rookie initiations, but this one takes the throne, literally. Von Miller, who just won a Super Bowl with the Rams and inked a 6-year, $120 million contract with Buffalo Bills, is understandably used to the finer things. And not that he was complaining, but when asked how things were at the beginning of training camp at St. John Fisher University, he said, quote, "I'm 33 years old, and toilet paper's different. The beds are different. There's no TV in the dorm room. You've got to make up your own bed and change it and do all that stuff every day. Takes some getting used to, but I'm all for it." Well, fast forward nearly 2 weeks, and the welcoming Buffalo Mafia filled in the cracks. Miller said that he received boxes on boxes on boxes of toilet paper and wipes that kept getting delivered to his room. He said, quote, "The first one was like a 4-pack, and then there was another 8-pack like the next day, and then there was some wipes, and it was plant-based, and it's just every day. It's like toilet paper everything," he said. Well, now we actually probably know who were sending all of those boxes of TP. It was probably all those people that were hoarding it at the start of the pandemic that went to the that went to the store to get all those. So he's easily the best Super Bowl representative ever. Nice job, Vaughn. Rang number 3. We had Trey Rangs in heaven. Iowa. So it was hard to say if the Field of Dreams game last week could muster all the same feels as the original. And while the game itself was a bit dull, I mean, you got two teams that are in basically last place. MLB did another great job marketing itself to the fans. Now, remember how we talked about this about the All-Star game, how baseball actually does a really good job marketing nostalgia. Well, no Kevin Costner this year, but having Ken Griffey Jr. walk out of the cornfield and ask his dad, Ken Griffey Sr., if he wants to have a catch. Well, that's all the feels. Yeah. And then Cubs great Ferguson Jenkins tossed down the first pitch to Cincinnati catching great and Hall of Famer Johnny Bench. Yep. Nostalgia is certainly all over the place, but one of the coolest and most retro things was the 7th inning stretch. And even though the Cubs weren't the home team, who better to lead the song than Harry Carey? That's right. Even though he passed away in 1998, Carey will still be regarded as probably the most famous of the 7th inning stretch singers. Well, Fox and MLB created Project Ivy, in which they recreated an animation of Carey singing his iconic version of Take Me Out to the Ballgame. Again, all these stories, look them up. They're all online. It's great. As unique as baseball itself, Carey's animation and sound was really legit and a true compliment to the nostalgia that the Field of Dreams game brought. So, let me hear ya. Go on. A 2, a 3. Ray is over for tonight. So congrats, MLB. They're not going to do a Field of Dreams game next year, by the way, because they're going to have games in London. So we'll see if they bring back the Field of Dreams game in 2024. But pretty decent way for them to go out here in this year.
I thought it was nice. It was a boring game, but the nostalgia. You're right. Baseball does it better than any league out there, and I think it has a lot to do with it's America's pastime. I mean, your father, my father. If any grandparents are out there alive, they can remember where they were when something incredible happened from the 40s all the way up to the 80s.
There's just a lot of history to draw from.
There is. And you can't tell me there wasn't a household in America, depending on the night or the afternoon, you're outside doing something, and everybody had a transition radio, and they would tune into the local game and do things and just be listening to the game. And when something exciting would happen, they'd turn it up. I know I grew up like that.
Yep.
So, well, JB, that's awesome. But, folks, that's Trey Rings. But we're also going to take this time also to get back to the NFL preview. And JB, I think we should go straight to the AFC East.
Yep. Well done, Mr. Kelly. Yeah, I mean, we just talked about Von Miller and the Buffalo Bills. They went 11-6 last year, and I think a lot of people thought that they underachieved in a way, and then they've got just heartbroken in their AFC playoff game against Kansas City.
Playoffs?
That went to overtime.
Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs?
Uh-huh. So what is it going to take for them to finally get back to the Super Bowl? Now, they got James Cook, the younger brother of Vikings running back Dalvin Cook, drafted in the second round to go alongside Devin Singletary and Zach Moss in the backfield. Josh Allen still an MVP candidate, but the AFC is so wide open. I think for them, they're lucky that they're in the AFC East because I don't see Miami, who went 9-8. And yes, they got Tyreek Hill this year in that trade with the Chiefs. I don't know that they have enough yet to challenge Buffalo. Now, Tua Tagovailoa, the best name to try to say in the league, he's going to have some help in the backfield now. They got Raheem Mostert from the Niners, Chase Edmonds, Sony Michel, and a bunch of other guys. But now they got Tyreek to go along with Jalen Waddle, who they drafted last year. A couple of speedsters, so they got to keep Tua upright. And I think one of the smartest things that they actually did was they signed Teddy Bridgewater to be Tua's backup. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Bridgewater gets in there at some point, if Tua starts to struggle.
Well, bringing Bridgewater in was genius. And the reason why it was genius is because here's somebody who's got behind Drew Brees for all this time. And I think that's just brilliant. Let's remember when Tua came into the NFL, he came in hurt. And that hurt. I think he had, in my opinion, a 2-year injury. Now, popping back up to Buffalo real quick, you talked about them and these two. Buffalo went 11-6 and Miami went 9-8 last year. Josh Allen's only been in the NFL for 3 years. And, this will be his third season, I should say. He was drafted in 2020. So I think he's got nothing but he's moving up in my books. His accuracy, the strength of his arm, and he is a beast to bring down. I'm sorry.
For sure.
The guy can run. So I don't think they underachieved last year. I think they're right on track. And in my opinion, I still think they win the AFC East, and I think they do better than 11-6. I think Miami is going to have some struggle depending on how healthy Tua really is. And I think Tua's got to trust himself like he did when he was at Alabama. He trusts himself in Bama. But I don't think he has that same confidence in himself right now. And I think once he gets that for himself, he'll be fine.
Yeah, and before we head to break, I think it'll be interesting to note that the Patriots are going without an offensive coordinator this year. They're kind of having dual people calling plays. Mac Jones has not got a ton of specialty weapons around him. They lost Josh McDaniels to the Raiders, so is Belichick going to be enough for them to get back to 10-7 again this year? Maybe. We'll see. And the Jets are going to be the Jets. They've already got their quarterback hurt, Zach Wilson. Yep. There's rumors that maybe Jimmy G may be heading out to Jets now that the job seems to go to Trey Lance. So be interesting. That I think the Bills are top of the mountain as far as the AFC East, and it's going to take some time or an absolute implosion for that to not happen anytime soon. We'll touch on the favorite division of Ivan Anderson, the AFC North and the AFC South, when we continue right here on Clutch Time Sports and TNCRadio.LIVE.
For the latest in ride-share and gig economy news, visit UberLiftDrivers.com. That's UberLiftDrivers.com.
This blog on TNCRadio.LIVE is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 5 best scenic drives for truck drivers. One of the many benefits of being a truck driver is traveling the beautiful United States. Truck drivers spend their life on the road. Although they may get tired of driving, there's still routes and attractions most look forward to seeing. Whether it be cruising down the coast to California, driving in the Smoky Mountains, or passing through the Arizona desert, truck drivers all have their personal favorites. Here are the 5 most beautiful scenic drives rated by truck drivers. Pacific Coast Highway. The Pacific Coast in California, also called Highway 1, is one of the most iconic scenic drives in the United States. Driving along the Pacific Coast reminds you of a movie or TV show. It's about 650 miles long and runs from Capistrano Beach in Orange County to Leggett in northern Mendocino. San Juan Skyway. San Juan Skyway, a scenic byway in Colorado, is known for its million-dollar views. The byway goes across the San Juan National Forest and has provided truckers with beautiful views of the mountains and landscape. Beartooth Highway. Beartooth Highway in Montana is a 68-mile byway that runs through southwest Montana and northwest Wyoming and goes into Yellowstone National Park. Along this drive, you'll see one of the most diverse ecosystems accessible by vehicle in the United States. Keep in mind that the scenic highway closes in the winter due to adverse winter conditions and typically opens up on Memorial Day weekend. I-64 in West Virginia. West Virginia has some of the most beautiful landscapes on the East Coast. Driving down I-64 in West Virginia feels like you're in a painting. If you have time to stop along your truck route, check out Tamarack, located just off I-64 in Beckley, West Virginia. Tamarack is a unique culture center with art from local artisans and delicious food. If you want the full Appalachian experience, check out Tamarack. Utah's Route 12. Utah's Route 12 is one of the most scenic routes in the United States. It's often called the All-American Road. Also, there are 2 national parks at each end of the road, Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef, and many other unique scenic views. This info blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
I'm Hope Savara. Join us on TNCRadio.LIVE at 7 p.m. Eastern with Building Strong Minds with your host, Dr. Christopher Cortman.
Wow. All right. Welcome back. A and B with you here on CBS, apparently. I think that was the CBS opening theme for their football coverage. But we're in the NFL preview. Listen to Clutch Time Sports with Anderson and Banker. Check us out, by the way, Clutch Time TNC on Instagram and Twitter. Ivan, let's jump over to the NFC or the AFC South real quick, because honestly, there's not a ton to talk about here, if we're being totally honest. Tennessee, I think the interesting thing is Tennessee went 12-5 last year. They're getting a healthy King Henry back, which is terrific for them, Derrick Henry. But they lost their 2 best receivers, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. They both left to Philly and Tampa, respectively. And then they brought in Robert Woods to try to be their number 1 guy from the Rams, but he's coming off an ACL tear that ended his year after 9 games last year as well. So it'll be really interesting to see how things go for Tennessee, especially now as well that they drafted the really athletic and speedy quarterback out of Liberty, Malik Willis, in the 3rd round to potentially push Ryan Tannehill out of that spot.
You know, I'm going to say that Tennessee's in a rebuilding year. I know the record of 12-5 doesn't reflect that, but you have to look at what they're putting on the field. You know, Woods, ACL issue, I'm sorry. A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and then Malik Willis that comes in there to take that quarterback spot. And Liberty is not a big school. He's a great talent. It's not a football school. And let's be honest, a lot of kids are opting out to go to smaller schools today. So I don't think Tennessee goes 12-5 this year. I think Tennessee drops down to 10 wins. I really do.
Well, I mean, they're in a bad division, top to bottom, at least compared to some of these others. So I could see them getting back to 12-5, and they did do a lot of that without Henry last year, who didn't come back until the playoffs. So playoffs, I know. We will see. Their biggest competition are probably going to be the Colts, but they brought in Matt Ryan now to be their quarterback because they can't ever seem to figure it out ever since Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning left. Carson Wentz is out. He's over to the Washington Commanders, which is still weird to say, but they probably have the best all-purpose running back in the league in Jonathan Taylor. So a lot of their offense is going to run through them. They just got to make sure that they get 4 wins in this division out of Houston and Jacksonville, because they lost in week 17 last year, or week 18, to the Jaguars to prevent them from getting into the playoffs last year. So they got to stick things up and win the games that they need to win, especially since Houston and Jacksonville combined to be 7-26 last year. So the Texans, could they be the surprise of the AFC this year? Probably not. Lovie Smith is in at head coach. They extended Brandon Cooks, who's their biggest primary weapon, for their quarterback, Davis Mills. They've got a young running back, Dameon Pierce, who could be exciting to watch, but they've got a lot of growing up to do, and they're just going to have a lot of hurdles to grow around it. And you know, maybe Deshaun Watson being gone now will help keep the distractions away. But I think if I'm putting more money on anybody to be a surprise in this division, it's Jacksonville. I mean, if Trevor Lawrence can make the leaps that he needs to do, he's got much better help on the offensive line now. They signed Brandon Sheriff to help sew that up. And then they got Christian Kirk, a wide receiver from Arizona, to come in. Travis Etienne is now going to be healthy. And with James Robinson, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch in the backfield. And then they've got their number 1 pick overall, Trayvon Walker from Georgia, on the defensive line. They expect him to be kind of a rush linebacker, but They also brought in Doug Peterson, who, as you may remember, was part of the Eagles team that beat New England in the Super Bowl with the Philly special and all that stuff. So they got rid of Urban Meyer and all that headache, and it'll be interesting to see how Jacksonville kind of evolves this year.
Jacksonville picks up one, maybe two more games, but getting up to Houston, Deshaun Watson was not the problem. Ownership is the problem with the Houston Texans, and until ownership understands how the game is played, how the NFL is played, they're going to be exactly where they're at, 4-12, if not 5-11. So that's it for the AFC South. Let's jump over to the AFC North.
Yeah, so the team that I think people slept on quite a bit last year was the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think considering how good the AFC West is going to be, and then you got Tennessee and Buffalo, I think people are still sleeping on the AFC champion as well. I mean, you've got Joe Mixon in the backfield, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, who make up probably the best trio of wide receivers on any AFC team. And then Joe Burrow, that guy just goes in and proves game after game that he's a champion. And he was only one game away, really one quarter away from doing it on the biggest stage ever. I mean, can you imagine if Cincinnati played the Rams in the Super Bowl, not in the Rams' home stadium?
Oh, that'd been a different game.
Who knows what happens?
It would have been a different game. The games he won last year in the playoffs. I mean, how many? Well, first of all,
in Kansas City.
Awesome. Kansas City,
probably the hardest place to play.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's crazy how I think people are still sleeping on them.
Yeah, they underestimate the kid. I mean, I think about it when he was at Ohio State. They underestimated him at Ohio State. He leaves. He gets to the NFL. Continue to underestimate this kid. I think he's a phenomenal talent, and his teammates love him. They absolutely love him.
Yeah, he is a leader.
Yeah,
and I think a shortage of really good young players that you could qualify as a leader of their team at that age. So, Baltimore is going to be an interesting place this year because Lamar Jackson is going to be without Marquise Brown, who's now out to Arizona. They're getting some of their running backs back. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards coming back from injury, but they haven't signed Lamar Jackson to an extension on his contract. So is that going to be looming over them throughout the season? They were only 8-9 last year. I don't know that they get much better than that.
Lamar Jackson needs a serious offensive coordinator. I don't think he has one. I don't think the coordinator that's there actually knows how to use his skills and his ability. You try to make him a pocket quarterback. He's not a pocket quarterback. He never will be a pocket quarterback. I think he has a lot more ability and accuracy in his arm, but you got to get it out of him. I don't see them doing no more than maybe 9 wins, maybe 10. They might squeak by. No, actually, they will get 10 wins because I'm going to jump right down to the biggest elephant in the room. They will beat my Steelers. I'm not worried about. They will beat my Steelers.
Yeah, Steelers were 9-7-1 last year, and that was with Big Ben. And now they're trying to figure out if their backup to Big Ben, Mason Rudolph, is going to be an answer, or is it going to be Mitchell Trubisky, who they brought in from Buffalo, or their first round draft pick, or their quarterback draft pick, Kenny Pickett. But it's weird. For the first time in 48 years, it feels like they're without Big Ben. And I mean, old man Roethlisberger did great for what he could do, but I mean, and then you got Cleveland in this division too, Ivan. They've got some weapons. If Deshaun Watson actually gets in a bunch of games, they could be a force, so to speak. I don't know that they're better than the Bengals. In fact, I know they're not better than the Bengals, but they went 8-9 last year. I think that's probably a pretty reasonable expectation for this year too.
I would agree with you, but let's remember the last name, Trubinsky. Who drafted him? Who drafted Trubinsky? Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they chose Trubinsky over a better quarterback, and Trubinsky is still Trubinsky. So I don't see anything that's going to happen with this team. This team needs to be real built, the Steelers. And Cleveland is exactly where they're at. They have no quarterback. They don't know what they're going to do. They got Kareem Hunt in the backfield. They got Nick Chubb. We know what Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt have always done, so that's nothing new. This is just going to be a total bad division.
Well, that pretty much ends up our AFC talk for tonight. We'll preview the NFC next week and then have some predictions and maybe some fantasy talk in a couple of weeks. But thank you for joining us, Clutch Time Sports. Josh Banker alongside Ivan. Thank you as well to Tom Kelly. Join us next week, 6 o'clock Pacific. Check us out on Clutch Time TNC on Twitter and Instagram. Good night, everybody.
See you later.